the tech, because he hasn't presented on Zoom before. So I'm going to send him a text and make sure he's not having any problems getting in. Or we may be having a very, very small meeting.
Well, I guess we'll know more soon.
Oh, meeting.
Well, I guess we'll know more soon. It looks like we got a Mitch is on here.
Hello, Mitch.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Seth, while we're waiting for more folks to show up, could you go ahead and make me a co-host?
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Wow, what a delay.
Yes. People. Sarah. Mitch, what you been into?
You would ask me a question right when I muted myself. A little bit of everything.
Hey, Liz. Hello, Ron.
Make sure I. Yeah, we're good.
I went to vote this morning.
Did you vote?
I did. There was a line out the door on the sidewalk.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty busy.
Yeah, because you guys are the other voting site in the county, I believe. The library.
You went to the Granite Falls site?
Yeah, the rec center there.
Well, it was by 8 o'clock. It was out the meeting room door, where you normally go in. So there was a line all the way from the big meeting room out the door, up the sidewalk to the main entrance to the library, down the sidewalk to our parking lot, and everybody was basically standing shoulder to shoulder, and they were the poll people were, everybody was in everybody's face.
Oh yeah. Everybody was wearing masks. I only saw like 2 people not wearing masks, and they were generally keeping about 6 feet distance on the sidewalk. And then inside it was about the same. It went fairly smoothly. It was from me driving there and returning back to the same point, it was about 1 hour.
I would say it was a pretty good cluster. What we had here. I went to use the restroom, and it was, and I don't know the whole mask thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right, wrong, or indifferent, but There were a lot of folks not. There was a significant number not wearing. I would say maybe it was half.
Yeah.
But everybody was crowding, and when I went to go use the restroom, everybody thought I was trying to break in line. I'm like, hey, if I don't go, I'm gonna wet the floor here.
Yeah, I joke around and I say, here's my mask. Well, with what some people are wearing and how they're wearing it, this would be actually better protection than if I were to do it their way. Because,
I see a lot of this.
Yeah, exactly. Had to
Some of this.
Yep, saw some of that today. I've seen it the whole time period, but and I've got some medical background experience. My wife's got 23 years in laboratory sciences at all serious levels of disease. So yeah, I've got a little bit of that information as a caveat, and it just frustrates me though when people they wear literally socks on their face or something like that, and if you do just a bare minimum of research, you understand it's like trying to get a golf ball to stick to a volleyball net because of the size of the virus versus the weave and pattern of the material that they're wearing. And it's when the governor came out with his little thing, magically everybody from CVS to Home Depot to Lowe's to Walmart, the Dollar Tree, all of a sudden came up with all these masks for sale. And they were charging over $1 a piece for them, every single store, including Walmart. And they were dust masks. They were not for medical purposes. So,
well,
I don't mean to get on my soapbox. You get me on my soapbox.
I don't want to see you on your like high up. You get hurt if you fall off.
Yeah. Hey, Seth. It looks like you've made Mitch the co-host instead of me.
Well, dang, I did.
That was that was it psychological thing?
He saw you getting up on that soapbox and figured you needed some authority to go with it.
Well, I can withdraw permission.
Please do.
There's no telling what I might do.
So I did just get a text from Lynn. He is working on connecting, so we haven't lost him. But I do hope we're going to see a few more people than this logging in.
Yeah, it comes and goes. We were actually, I was doing Zoom meetings last year with I took some college classes at Notre Dame, and they were all obviously on Zoom. So I was doing this in October of last year, and then I'm in the amateur radio club, the Lenore Amateur Radio Club also, and I have been duly elected the president of that club January 1st of this year, and it has been interesting travels. But we as the officers, because we lived up to about an hour and a half apart, decided to do a Zoom type format for some of our meetings in practice so that the committees could meet that way also eventually down the road. This was no lie, January 28th, when we as the officers started doing this, just about 2 weeks or 3 weeks before everything kicked off. So it's kind of interesting that it happened when it did.
Yeah, it sounds like your timing was pretty good there.
Oh, it was almost perfect, you could say. But we've seen, out of 30 plus members, we'd see maybe 10 people at times on the Zoom meetings. A lot of times, because you don't have a physical place to travel, people forget.
We're doing some cattlemen's meetings, and just about everybody has YouTube on their phone, and it's you can just connect, and so So we are simulcasting this on YouTube for the universe to see. There's not anybody on there right now, but that's, I just put in the chat the link. So if there was somebody that wanted to attend that way, whether it's now or in the November meeting, we can advertise that same website. And when the meeting's on, it'll be a 20-second delay, but they'll be able to see it. It's not as good for interacting, but they can still see it. You're muted, Liz, but I can read lips.
So you were talking before, we didn't even know we were muted. Anyway, so the YouTube will like sort of be there forever, whereas the recording of the Zoom.
You're muted, Liz, but I can read lips.
Oh, I can hear her.
Oh.
I was going to say, I think Mitch has the YouTube on because
Yeah, there's a delay. Sorry. I fooled myself too.
Okay, Liz, I'm sorry, I lost you.
Okay.
Whatever.
The YouTube, the meeting on YouTube will be there like forever. Whereas the Zoom link, the recording link for Zoom, that only lasts like for 2 months or something. That doesn't last forever. Is that correct?
So the YouTube is tied to my YouTube account.
Uh-huh.
So we can post it there. We cannot post it there. And sometimes, anyways, I guess it's like the link that I'm putting out right now, since there's not a good way with that YouTube live.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a good way to, I don't know what the link is going to be for YouTube live until I go live.
And do it. Yeah.
So what I did is I created that NC State link.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever I go live, I use that.
Okay.
So the video will exist on my personal, on my NC State YouTube account.
Mm-hmm.
Is where it could exist, or I guess we could. I don't know. Does the Beekeepers Association have a? Anyways, it could live there. Do you think folks want to see the videos? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, what I was doing, like for example, the last speaker we had, his talk was pretty intense factually. So when I'm writing the minutes, I'm trying to share a little bit of what we heard, but I can't really like transcribe the whole speech. So because I have the link to the meeting, I put that in the minutes. So if you're interested in hearing what the speaker said, you can click on that link and then enjoy what we enjoyed. But I had thought when we were speaking previously, you had told me that the Zoom link only has a limited life of, and I thought you said something like a couple of months.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut in. Seth, Lynn Williams, our speaker, is having trouble connecting. And I just called him and I couldn't help him figure it out. Could I give you his number and have you give him a call, please?
Absolutely. What's his number?
It's 803 504 9313.
I'll call him right now.
Thank you.
Is it a real brick wall?
Oh, here we go. We have a speaker.
I'm mute.
Sarah, I was able to work some magic and and get Lynn on here.
Excellent.
But full disclosure, he was already connected when I talked with him.
That's like when your car's making a noise and you take it to the mechanic and it stops making the noise.
All right.
Okay. Do you happen to know off the top of your head, Seth, how many people were registered for this evening? Are we waiting for anyone?
Gosh, I haven't even. I will tell you in 2 weeks. It's
Hey, Linda.
one of those interesting days. I feel a little disorganized. Oh, we've got 15 folks that have signed up.
15. Okay. And we
I'll
have
I'll
about
share-
half of that sitting in front of us. And it is a quarter after our official start time. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. And hopefully some of the rest of those folks will be joining us shortly. Please excuse my dogs rampaging in the background. I would put them out in the yard, but then you would just hear them whining through the door. So welcome everybody, mostly familiar faces. Linda is visiting. You want to introduce yourself, Linda?
Okay. My name is Linda Knowlton. I'm actually the president of the Burke County Beekeepers Association. And Sarah was kind enough to invite me to your meeting since she is kind enough to join our meetings. So here I am.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
And I apologize for being late, but I was on a work meeting that was supposed to end at 6 and didn't end until now. So,
All good.
yep.
All right, so we'll jump right into officer reports, starting with Secretary Liz.
Okay, so the minutes were emailed. I think I did it today in a, last, reminder that the meeting, I tried to send a bunch of emails so that people would be getting reminded again and again and again. And then also I just wanted to sort of say, and I sent an email on this already too, that to remind everyone that our domain and our email address are now a .com instead of a .org. So that I've sent that email to everybody, so should be aware. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Neither Travis or Amy are here to give a treasurer's report, but Liz also emailed that out earlier today, and there were no transactions in either direction this month, so things look pretty much as they have looked for a while. Ron, you have comments as program director?
I just want to say hello to everybody and hello, Lynn. It's good to see you. We've had many phone conversations. And it's good to see your face, and we're almost meeting face to face. So hopefully this will get better.
He's muted.
Is he muted?
Yeah.
And next month, we're bringing back Susie Spencer, and I believe she's going to be speaking about honey tasting. So all in all, we're trying to do our best and work through this.
All right, thank you, Ron. Just to follow up on that a little bit, the board, I'll come back to our survey results in a minute or two, but the board did decide that our November meeting will also be on Zoom, and our traditional Christmas dinner, we decided needed to be canceled this year, unfortunately. So we'll be meeting next month on Zoom, no meeting in December, and we'll let you know when we have figured it out what 2021 is going to look like, or at least the first couple months of 2021. Tracy is also not here to give a vice president's report. So I will jump right into the survey results. We had 24 people responding to that survey. So thank you if you were one of the respondents. Just over 80% of the people responding attended our meetings monthly prior to coronavirus. And now that we're on Zoom, we have 54% saying that they come occasionally, 30% saying they come monthly, and 17% saying they have never been coming to the Zoom meetings. The most common reasons for not attending the Zoom meetings, just under 40% said that they miss meetings unintentionally for reasons not having to do with Zoom and not because they didn't know we were meeting. Just over 20% are not coming because they don't like Zoom. And then the other answers just had one or two respondents. So we've got just one or two people who have not been aware of when the meetings are, haven't been comfortable with the technology, or don't have the internet capabilities to do a Zoom meeting. We asked two questions about meetings going forward. And if we were to return to in-person meetings, 70% of the people responding to that survey said they are ready to come back in person. Now, I should note that we finished that survey before this latest jump in case counts, so some of those people may have changed their answers at this point. No way of knowing. The second question offered the possibility of hybrid meetings, and just under 60% said that they would come in person, 20% said they would come on Zoom, and 20% said they weren't sure. So the officers went ahead and checked, and unfortunately the church where we have been meeting does not have the Wi-Fi capabilities for us to do a hybrid meeting with some people there in person and some people on Zoom. So because we can't do a hybrid meeting, and we do still have a fair number of people who would prefer to meet on Zoom, and because most of the officers also are on the not ready to come back to meeting in person side, that's why we decided we are going to continue with Zoom meetings and not meeting in person for at least the next couple of months. Now, on the open-ended question, we had various expressions of support for Zoom meetings and for in-person meetings. And we also had one person requesting that we do field trips, outdoor meetings. Which is a thing that I had been wondering about already. So this is something we might start exploring for next year come spring when the weather starts to be more suitable. And it may be something that we want to look at even if COVID is no longer an issue. So that's the real quick wrap up of the survey. And it is actually still open. So anybody who hasn't yet weighed in with their opinion is welcome to go back and fill it out at this point. So that is our old business. Our big piece of new business is that October is the month that we are supposed to have officer elections, as stated in our chapter constitution. We have a very small number of attendees at this month's meeting. We started asking for officer candidates several months ago, June maybe, and we have had no volunteers other than all of the current officers are willing to continue for 2021, or at least into the beginning of 2021. Tracy, our vice president, would like to step down at some point, but she is willing to stay on until things reach some kind of normal. So that said, are there any nominations from the floor? Didn't think there would be. Can I have a motion that we vote on the entire current officers being reelected as a slate?
Aye.
So moved by Mitch. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, let's do this by voice vote. If you can, go ahead and unmute yourself. All those in favor of all of the current officers retaining their position for next year, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, all current officers have been reelected for 2021. Does anybody else have any new business to bring to the floor? Okay. I would like to try one new thing for this meeting that I hope to incorporate into our meetings moving forwards, which I have not done in prior meetings. Well, I was hoping to do it at the church and they don't have the Wi-Fi. As you probably know, the state has on their website quiz questions that use the questions from the various levels of master beekeeping tests. So I'd like to try having us go through just this certified test this month, just as a review of general beekeeping knowledge for all of us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on screen sharing on my screen, and we can go through these questions and see if we can answer them together as a group. Not my email. There we go. All right, so can you guys all see my screen with the internet browser and the quiz?
Yes.
I see some squinting like it might be really small letters. Let me see if I can zoom in. All right, so DWV, or deformed wing virus, is a virus that is vectored most often by which bee pest? If you know the answer, go ahead and chime in, please.
I always get this one mixed up. I think it's tracheal mites.
Do we have anybody else with an opinion?
I think it's varroa mite.
Seth thinks it's varroa mites. Linda thinks it's varroa mites. We have a small majority for varroa mites. Let's select that. Which of the following is not true concerning the Nasonov gland? It is commonly referred to as the scent gland. Workers fan over it to call attention to food sources. Workers fan over it to call attention to a hive entrance, or workers fan over it to call attention to where to sting. Which one of those is false?
This is false.
I say attention to where to sting.
Okay. Anyone have a different answer?
If I can play, I'd say food source, but I don't know. I might be wrong. I don't like betting against Ron.
All right, we have 2 votes for 2 answers. I need somebody to weigh in to make it not an even tie.
I agree with Seth, and I'm not afraid to disagree with Ron.
It's just,
All right, we'll
happens.
say that it is not related to food sources.
Yeah. Oh, wait, shoot. Yeah. Wait, not workers fan over.
You want to look again, Liz?
Yeah, workers fan over to call attention. Yeah, that's false. Yeah.
Okay. All right, question 3. Honeybee eggs of all workers, drones, and queens will normally morph to the next stage, larva, in how many days? 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, or 6 days? Liz is signaling 3.
I'll agree with Liz tonight.
All right, nobody else is weighing in. We'll go with 3. For a European queen, the number of days from the egg is laid until her emergence as an adult is 16 to 17 days, 20 to 21 days, or 24 to 25 days.
European queen. Is that a trick?
No, it's not. I don't think it's a trick, but I think the Africanized ones have a different number.
Oh,
A
Well,
few
for-
days less.
I know it to be 16 of queens in my universe.
All right, Mitch is giving the thumbs up for that. We'll go with that. In the place of blood, bees have a fluid that carries nutrients throughout their bodies. That fluid is epithelium, hemolymph, heliothis, or cytokine.
Hemolymph.
Okay, anybody think differently?
No, I think the same. I'm in agreement with Ron this time.
Okay, we have a plurality for hemolymph. Honeybees breathe by use of their ocelli, spiracles, corbicula, or spermatheca.
What's all your eyes? I think it's spiracles.
All right, I hear spiracles from Liz. Any objections? Okay, you can go with spiracles. Which of the following would not pertain to queen honeybees? Supersede your cell, royal jelly, corbiculae, or spermatheca?
Corbiculae.
All right, Seth thinks corbiculae. Anybody else have an opinion?
I agree with Seth.
Okay. One of the major reasons bees die over winter is temperature drops below freezing, too few bees to maintain an adequate cluster, low varroamite levels, or uncapped nectar that freezes.
Too few bees.
All right, well, it sounds like folks say too few bees. Balling is a term describing the large group of bees after swarming, usually found hanging from a limb or other structure. How workers chew wax flakes from their mandibles, shaping it into a sphere as they build wax cells. An aggressive behavior response by workers. It can be done to reject a queen, usually at requeening, or as a defense against other pests and intruders to the hive. Or the activity by bees used to cool the hive during hot summer days. They gather in groups on the exterior of the hive bodies. Mitch is signaling C, the aggressive behavior. I
Yes.
see some nodding.
Aggressive.
We'll go
It kills the queen.
Although the references might disagree slightly, what is the minimum temperature at which bees will fly to forage? Other weather factors impacting this activity. 32 to 45 Fahrenheit, 46 to 50 Fahrenheit, 60 to 70 Fahrenheit, or 70 to 80. All right, I see some thumbs, but I'm not sure what they're responding to.
60 to 70, I say.
60 to 70? Anybody disagree?
46 to 50.
Oh, we have split responses, 46 or 60.
I go with the 46 to 50.
All right, that sounds like the majority. Locating food sources is the job of scout bees, drone bees, queen bees, or guard bees.
Locating food sources.
I would say scout bees.
Yes.
What is scout bees?
Oh, Seth, are you playing Jeopardy now? Whoops. What
I'll take
often
that for
happens
2
to
points.
drones?
I couldn't do that.
What often happens to drones before the winter? They are evicted by the workers, they hibernate, They remain in the hive and form their own cluster, or they stay isolated in the honey super.
They get evicted.
They get evicted. Any objections? Nice sign language, Mitch.
Mhm.
What is the first task newly emerged workers typically perform? Cell cleaning, foraging, feeding larvae, or wax production?
Cell clean.
Cleaning.
Cleaning. All right. In the autumn, in preparation for winter, which of the following tasks should a beekeeper perform to help the bees stay healthy over the winter? Place the queen excluder over the bottom box to keep the bees from being near the front entrance. Provide adequate ventilation to reduce condensation within the hive. Add supers with foundation to provide space for the bees to move up, or make a split out of colonies that have a large bee population.
B.
B. Okay, adequate ventilation.
I agree.
Our next question is also about adequate ventilation, curiously enough. Without adequate ventilation during the winter months, the warm air from the cluster of bees rises, it hits the cold inner cover, and condensation drips down onto the bees as ice cold water. This will cause the bees to become chilled and die, drowned, abscond, or starve.
Chill and die.
Yes.
Chilled and die, okay. I should not sound so enthusiastic about that possibility. Sugar syrup that is 2 parts sugar and 1 part water is generally used to feed bees during which season? Spring, summer, late fall, early winter, or late winter, early spring?
Late fall, early.
Yep. Late winter, early spring. Oh, no, wait a minute. Late fall. What did you say? I'm sorry.
Fall, early
Elizabeth.
winter. Late fall, early winter.
Yes, that's what I meant to say, but I was looking at something else. I was looking at the last one.
Aha. All right, late fall, early winter is our chapter choice. From the following choices, what is the best way to kill wax moths in stored drawn comb?
You know this.
Refrigeration.
Not refrigeration.
Freezing.
Freezing.
All right, well, I hear several votes for freezing without my even reading the choices.
So have you guys lost any hives to wax moths this year?
I don't know if I've lost a hive necessarily, but I think I had they absconded for some reason, and it was because there was like I assume it was because of the wax moths. I had a couple of frames that I thought I had removed, and then they were sort of still there. One hive absconded. Actually, it was a what do you call a nook that I had captured. And then when I went to put it in the big hive,
I lost 4 of them this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have 3 more questions here. Chemical substances released externally by a bee that stimulates a response in another bee are called spiracles, hormones, pheromones, or endocrines.
See.
Pheromones, C. Okay. To help find a queen in a hive, beekeepers often mark the queen with a colored dot. These dots also help beekeepers keep track of the age of their queen, as there are specific colors for specific years. What color will be used to mark 2021 queens, next year's queen?
Would that be white?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up. It's not blue and green. And I
No.
know because those were the past 2 years.
I think it's white. Sarah, how come you're not answering any of these?
Because I'm filling in the blanks.
Oh.
All right, sounds like we have a vote for white.
Okay, I'll go for that.
And last question. Different races of honeybees exhibit different characteristics. Which race is most closely identified with excessive propolis production? The Caucasians, the Carniolans, the Italians, or the Germans?
The Italians.
I
Alright,
think it's the Italians.
Okay, let's see how we did.
Ooh, did pretty good.
Okay, so we only missed 2. What did we miss? Nazanov They do use it to call attention to food sources. They do not use it to call attention to where to sting.
Yes, we were wrong. Maybe Ron's right.
Maybe. And then down at the end,
I was playing
this is
devil's advocate.
propolis. It's not the Italians, it's the Caucasians.
Caucasians.
Oh, wait, what was the correct answer to number 2?
Number 2 was they do not use it to call attention to where to sting.
Oh, where to sting. Oh, was that you? That was Ron. Isn't that what Ron picked? Ron was right. Seth and I were wrong. Mark this moment in time.
We'll settle this later.
Okay.
I didn't know we were keeping score.
No, I just like to point out when I'm wrong and Ron's right. He likes those moments.
Yes. Very rare.
Yeah, they don't happen that much.
That said, we collectively got a 90%. That's a passing grade. So we should all feel comfortable about maintaining our certified standing. I think we are all at least certified beekeepers. So that's good. I think that was long enough that we will not go on to the journeyman level questions. All right. And I wanted to add in a little bit of open Q&A about discussion about what's going on in our hives. We've kind of been intermixing that since we're such a small group. So I think at this point, I would like to go ahead and turn it over to Lynn if you are ready to go. You good, Lynn?
Oh, me?
No,
Oh.
our speaker.
Okay.
So Lynn Williams is with Beehive Thermal Industries. He's the inventor of the Mighty Mite Killer thermal treatment for varroa mites. He's been keeping bees for 20 years. He's an inventor, and he spent more than 40 years working in industrial automation controls and systems. So he's going to be talking to us about science versus varroa mites and how science plus technology could lead to a solution. So Lynn, you are muted. You'll need to unmute yourself and then you'll be good to go.
See if that's the right button. Is that it?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Just to start off, it's been a very disturbing year, but I hope everybody stayed safe and hope your bees are doing well. And I'll bring this PowerPoint up and let's all get together again in the near future. So let's see what we've got here. Okay. Temperature versus varroa mite. This is my standard presentation. I've done it several places in Texas and Florida and different parts of the country. Meet our enemy. That's what this nasty little rascal looks like. Every honeybee colony in the continental United States and Canada either has varroa mites today or will have them soon. And it's actually 100%. Scientific name, Varroa destructor, is originally a pest of Asian honeybees. Through international trade, it was introduced around 1987 in all beekeeping countries except Australia. It is a vector for viruses, or it compromises the immunosuppression system. Now, something we're working on along the virus end of it. We talk to a lot of scientists around the world. In Australia and islands of Hawaii, where there is no presence of the varroa mite, testing has shown that most of your common viruses are already in the bees. And we actually believe that with Dr. Samuel Ramsey's study, where the bees are feeding off the fat body tissue, you lower their capability of being immune to the viruses and the viruses start showing up. Do we have proof yet? No. There is some research ongoing in that category. There it is. When you see the mite on the top side of the bee, basically, he's looking for a new host. He's already depleted the fat body tissue of the current bee. Dr. Samuel Ramsey, of course, it was his discovery that showed how the varroa destructor mite actually goes in between the plates on the underside of the bee. The fangs of the mite versus the fat body tissue and what it secretes are very close in composition. So it quickly starts, draining the fat body tissue off the bee, and actually depletes to the point where, a worker bee can fly off and not have enough energy level to even return back to the hive. This picture, courteous of Dr. Ramsey, shows what we just saw previously, where the mites are actually on the underside of the bee. He's a wonderful presenter. Oh, when I'm with him and around him, he's just fascinating. Can be seen with the naked eye. New mites are clear to tan. Older mites are reddish brown in body. And as we just discussed, they feed off the fat body tissue. Non-chemical approaches. Natural beekeeping, let your bees swarm. OTS and ITS variations. Natural oxalate vegetable products. Essential oils, which do not work. Survival of the fittest, genetic evolution, and this becoming a very, very strong work that's ongoing by different groups around the world. Brood breaks, thermal treatment. We all need to accept the fact we have an extra member of the family, the varroa mite, and it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Let's look at the cycle. Your queen lays an egg. This egg is cared for by the nursery bees. The larvae here, when it's time to be capped, puts off a pheromone scent that triggers the queen mite. When she smells that, boom, she enters, then your nursery bees cap it off. Now, what the queen does is she is already mated. She produces 4 offspring, the very first one being a male, and then the other 3 are female. And as they develop under the cap brood, this male mates with the other 3 females to guarantee that survival of the mite will continue. Successful varroa control is proactive, not reactive. We need to control varroa before the mites reach levels that threaten colony productivity and survival. And, it's like maintenance on your car. If you don't do regular maintenance on equipment and all, it's the same thing with our bees. You've got to be very proficient about having a program of testing and monitoring your bees. External feeding versus reproductive mites. The parasite feeding mite lives off of and only on our honeybees. Reproductive mite resides in the brood frames. Alcohol watch mite counts only reveal the loose feeding mites. Mite counts. What do the numbers mean? This is from Randy Oliver, and an excellent chart showing how the adult bee population starts their rise here in the spring and early summer. And then here on the next level, you get to August, your mite levels just start peaking. Now, August is critical for treatment, but a lot of your chemicals do not work due to the higher temperatures. Here's the reason August is such a critical time. In September, your queens change over and start laying eggs for the big fat winter bees. They got to survive all winter for months versus the 5 or 6 weeks that we experience the rest of the year. If you don't have a strong nursery bee population, she can be laying eggs and they're not going to be able to care for the number of eggs she's laying. A good productive queen produces 1,500 eggs a day. But if the numbers in your hive are already on a decline and headed toward collapse, you're not going to be able to raise up your winter bees. A simulation for non-resistant colonies starting with 150 mites, low mite immigration. Average overall R value for the period from 15th of April through 15th September is 0.021. If you remove the crash indicator from this simulation, but the project with alcohol wash counts suggests that the colony had very scant chance of making it through the winter. And even if it did, it would start the next season with unsustainable 991 mites. A lot of people don't realize that, if you go back and read Dr. Charles Owen's 5-year study on the cluster, the bees will actually maintain close to 90 degrees in the center of the cluster. The outside edges and walls, as they migrate to feed and back in and out, typically doesn't fall much below 58 to 60 degrees. So your mites are actually feeding off the fat body tissue during the winter because they're in that good temperature range. The virus vector. I spoke on it earlier about Australia and Hawaii had viruses, but no varroa. We're aware of one scientific test that found a virus with copies that was inside a brood cell, and the copies were perceived to have been ingested as they were removed from the digestive system of the varroa. No hemoglobin vector theory is lost. The immunosuppression system compromises seems most plausible to me, and keeping your colonies healthy and all should be well. So there's still a lot of ongoing work on this. I know of another group right now that is testing bees from all over the country as far as viruses, and this would be samples that are pulled before thermal treatment and then 10 days after thermal treatment. So on that note, one of our customers took it on itself to do what's prompted the pilot program this year. Scott Moford and a state inspector, Kim, here's the samples off of between 200 and 300 bees that was sent to a Geno lab. In his hive, he had black queen cell, chronic bee, Israeli bee, paralysis, the Lake Sinai, and sac brood viruses. After they were thermally treated, 3 of these disappeared, were no longer present. So we wonder if bees have a system much like ourselves. We get run down, we catch a virus, our temperature goes up as a means of trying to terminate the virus. We should have these results back on thermal treatment versus viruses sometime this winter. And then this will give us a much better idea, and hopefully then we can get some larger grants to expand the study. This is being done by the Honeybee Research Center. Now it is coordinated with Dr. Tarpey's staff, but this is not Dr. Tarpey's study, and basically the samples are being sent in because to him, or the NC State rather, because they have the latest equipment for testing. There's really no reason to go through the rest of it other than the fact that it is an ongoing pilot program. This is their Hive to a Worldwide Monitor project. You can actually go to their website and you can monitor weight, temperature in the hives worldwide from different places. David Howe came up with an interesting discovery in Texas a couple of years ago. He keeps this little pop-up in the corner of his laptop. He's studying to be a doctor. And all of a sudden, as you see these spikes here, temperature inside the hive spiked up to 105 degrees. And then boom, they swarm. What they did is they gorged themselves with honey, went to generating heat, and then they left. So he alerted people worldwide, and they were seeing some of the same swarm characteristics. And basically, I got way ahead of myself, so I'm not going to read through all this. I've already brought it up. If you've ever noticed how vigorous new swarms are, it's like they are just going at it like crazy to develop the new hive and everything they're in. Dr. Leinhardt's study out of Europe shows that at 101 degrees, mites are damaged and they die. So when you catch a swarm, you have virtually a mite-free hive. We all have mites coming out of the winter. The numbers will depend on your fall counts. Spring treatment is done about the time the flow starts to end. Post-harvest, remember your mite peak is coming up in August. And then we do a thermal treatment in the fall just as a cleanup, just to ensure that you don't have any mites going into the winter. 1996, the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Study, and partially funded by the USDA, performed a one-year study at apiaries about 200 hives across Vermont and New Hampshire. Bees were removed and placed in a hive box and were given a thermal treatment. What they did is, in Russia, they've been actually doing thermal treatment for 40 plus years. And they used a 1,500 watt light bulb. So the Sustainable Agricultural Group, what they did is they did a mirror image copy of the brood box that the Russians were using, and they used temperature. And the results were 82 to 98% termination of trachea, Jacobson, and the Varroa mites. Right here, if you want to do a screenshot or something, this published data is still online. But what happened is, by 1996, we were well on the path of using chemicals. And our chemicals only terminate mites that are exposed. So with that 1996 study, it prompted Professor Bick and Dr. Leinhardt over in Europe. They started doing thermal treatment, and they were testing against the two popular items in Europe, which is Formidol and Veridol. The summer treatment showed a high increase in mite counts with the chemical products and a very low mite count with the thermal system. Fall treatment showed the same results as the summer treatment. Chemical treatments only had a minor result of terminating Varroa mite, whereas thermal treatment terminated the Varroa mite under the cap brood with no chemicals products can make this claim. You can go to our Facebook group, Mighty Mite Thermal Treatment Users, and under the Files tab, all of their studies, published studies, are listed there. Apius cerana defends itself against mites by heating the worker brood to a temperature above 95.9 Fahrenheit, in which the developmental stages of the mite are no longer capable of normal development. The drone brood of Apius cerana is heated only to 92.3, which does not harm the mites in the drone brood. The reproductive capability of female exposed mites significantly decreases when you get to the higher temperatures like 98 Fahrenheit. And above 38 C or 100.4, exposed mites die without engaging in reproduction at all. Published study that goes all the way back to 1990. And here again, you can go to our Facebook group and click on a file tab and it's listed there. Are y'all familiar with Christian Traynor? She spent a year with the Germans over there at their institute. I heard her speak a couple of years ago. If you want to be like an OTC type beekeeper and not use chemicals, what she showed us slides of is you take a brood frame with no wax, place it in the hive, and in about 7 days, the bees will make a solid sheet, both sides of that frame, of nothing but drone brood. The mites prefer drone. You pull that frame out, cut the wax out, cut open the drone brood and inspect it for mites, and put it in the spring, put it back in. And that's how they naturally control their mite levels in Germany. She's fascinating. I love her work. This was a study, well, not really a study, but a feature article that Alison McAfee did. She's at the university there at British Columbia. Excellent lady, very, very intuitive. And I've had a lot of documentation we've sent back and forth there, but it was featured in the American Bee Journal back the first of the year. And there are still a lot of unanswered questions about thermal treatment, but we keep striving forward, and it works. Mike Emmer, who's a well-known master beekeeper over in Missouri, he bought a unit and he did a study across 30 hives with thermal treatment. Now, one thing with chemicals is you see instant gratification in 3 or 4 days. That's not the case with thermal treatment. And this slide shows what happens is when you do a thermal treatment, yes, you're going to terminate some of the exposed mites, but the majority of the problem is under your cap brood. The bees go into a house cleaning mode 3 days after the thermal treatment. What happens is that mite dies under the cap brood. The bees can actually smell the decaying mite. They will uncap that brood and remove the larvae. And we've got hundreds of pictures of removed larvae with mites on them. What you have to be careful about is after 2 to 3 weeks, and you don't have mites in your hive, you've got to have honey supers and wax frames ready, because at that point forward, every egg she lays turns into a working bee, and your hive will explode. And if you don't give them room, they'll swarm. This is a 7-day post-treatment in a live queen cell that was opened up, just to show that there's no harm to the bees, cap queen cells, supersedures, or any of the cap brood. There's another picture also, 7-day post-treatment. You got live brood, no harm to the bees' eggs, larvae, capped or uncapped. And the reason being is we have flowing air. When you reach the thermal temperature set point of 106.5 degrees, you remove my special closure stick and you have full flowing air coming in the entrance. And with our system, you vent out the top of the hive. So we don't restrict the air. And basically, when you got flowing oxygen and moving air, you don't have any issues of harming the bees or any of the brood eggs or anything. Bees basking in the thermal. Excellent customer in Texas. And he has a full video of this. He did thermal treatments in the dark, nighttime. And what he did here is after he reached the 106.5 degrees, he took a short closure stick and he would move it. And every place he placed it where we had the full openings, the bees that were bearding on the outside of the hive would actually move over to where that heat was. And they were like basking in it. He moved the stick to the other end of the entrance, the bees would move over. So he challenged me a couple of years ago. He said, do you have a chalk box like what carpenters use? I said, sure, I got chalk. He said, all right, your next thermal treatment, when the bees start bearding, go out there and take some orange or red chalk and dust those bees that are bearding closest down to the entrance. And the bees were actually moving back into the hive and back out. There's a lot of unanswered questions, but the bees seem to, know that this thermal treatment and heat is good for them. Tropical A labs. Boy, you talk about a top secret study, and he let the cat out of the bag at the ABF convention in January. He left for Thailand with 4 of our thermal treatment units. And he got to the end of the, he actually flew back into Chicago in January for the ABF. Nobody knew about this except Dr. Ramsey, his counterparts in Thailand, and myself. But the question came up about tropical A labs. This is the new threat, and it's spreading all the way to Korea now out of Southeast Asia. The thing about tropical A labs is the males will continue mating with females, and they will travel on the ground and search out honeybees by the scent of honey. They will hitch a ride on rodents. So one of his last questions that was asked was, well, what do we do about it? And Dr. Ramsey's response was simple: thermal and formic pro are the only things that will kill them. Now, unfortunately, Dr. Ramsey has been unable to return to Thailand due to COVID-19. And we were so excited about seeing him finish up his study. This is the product that I developed, gosh, almost 7 years ago. I tested for 2 years before I was scared to death to even go to market. But what you have an industrial controller here. You have a thermal heating pad that is sandwiched on 2 pieces of aluminum plate. You have a special closure stick, and you slide it in, power it up, press this mode button, and you will get a flashing blue light. When it changes to flashing green, we are at the temperature might kill set point, and we remove this stick to guarantee the flow of fresh air and oxygen into the hive. It will terminate hive beetles if they happen to be in the brood box, and we treat single and double deep brood boxes all together. Hive beetles that are up above that, and up in your honey supers and everything, what you'll find is they're going to run to the top of the hive. They do not like heat. And if you got your hive tool handy, you can mash them just as fast as they get to the top. Here's another drawing. Shows the thermal pad here, how it easily slides in. This is a picture of a double deep setup. And you'll notice that we have an insulation board right here. It has a properly sized 3/8 diameter hole in it. The issue is our wooden hives. They're only a 0.7 R-rated insulation factor. So we can only treat the brood boxes. If our hives had higher insulation factors like Apamate, Technoset, and the polystyrenes, you can actually treat more of the hive. But with our woodenware, that's not possible. So an insulation board is placed up here. The thermal unit has an internal sensor that goes in on the inside. That same matching thermistor sensor is in the heater pad. So with the algorithms, we are comparing the sensor in the brood box versus the temperature sensor in the heater pad. And with that, we can maintain a 0.01 Celsius degree of accuracy, plus or minus. And that's, you got to have that. You can't have a runaway system. If we exceed temperature within like 1.5 to 2 degrees, we will shut the system down through the software and program. I have thermally treated bees at 112 degrees with no ill effect in my testing. In Germany, testing there and studies show that bees don't start dying until you get about above 118 degrees. And typically it's 120 and above. One unit will service multiple hives. It's mobile. You can do a thermal treatment on a hive, remove it, go to the next hive. There is a drawback. It's a 2.5 hour treatment. Dr. Bick and Dr. Leinhart, with their studies, showed 2.5 hours between 106 and 108 degrees was required to terminate the mite under the cap brood. And I've seen good results at 1.5 hour time frame. I'm just not willing to deviate from what the studies say. Required power is only 220 watts, which is less than 2 amps. Upon reaching mite mode, the temperature is maintained and power usage is very minimum. I have a lot of customers that buy these Harbor Freight tailgate generators. They're typically 900 watts, between 900 and 1,000 watts, and you can buy them for $90 on sale. And golly, Harbor Freight has probably sold 250, 300 of these to beekeepers so they can go to their remote apiaries and do thermal treatment. Recommended applications 3 times per year. Florida and parts of Hawaii are different. They don't ever have a brood cycle. They don't have winter. So you got brood year round. So that has to be every 90 days in those areas. You don't have to use pesticides to kill the mites. Your honey production explodes, kills the mites under the cap brood every time, kills SHB that is present in the hive body. Studies suggest trachea mites were completely eliminated via thermal. We don't see much of the trachea mites anymore. The thermal belt has a thermal sensor and a second sensor is inserted into the hive, and the controller analyzes the readings from both of them. Okay, fire away. Questions?
I actually have a question.
Sure.
In the beginning, you said that the essential oils don't work. Could
Nope.
you say why?
Powdered sugar and essential oils will force the bees to do cleaning, but you're only cleaning the the mites that are on the top side of the bees. Bees cannot clean mites out between their plates on the underside. So what you're cleaning up is where they have already depleted all the fat body tissue. Is it helpful? I'm talking with several scientists, actually not.
Really? What was the cycle of the mites again?
You mean a cycle?
You
want to go back up and see the...
Yeah, I think it was in the very beginning.
Yes.
Had,
right here. Queen lays her egg.
Yep.
Bee starts developing. And then right here, when it's time for that larvae to be capped and the food source is put in, that larvae puts out a pheromone scent, and that triggers the mite. That triggers that queen to enter at that time. And that way she gets capped right in there with the developing larvae. And then she lays her eggs, and the first one's always a male. And that male mates with his 3 following sisters. So you get 3 active queens that come out of every cap brood when the bee emerges. And the bee, looking at it right here, is non-productive. So you start seeing a decline, especially as your mite loads start increasing as you get closer to August.
Mhm. Okay. And one last question. I'm
Sure.
sorry about the questions. What was the temperature again?
106.5 degrees. And we maintain that very accurately. In fact, sometimes in Texas, Arizona, California, they're actually doing thermal treatments at above 100 degrees or higher. In conversations you'll see on Facebook and all, they go, well, why do we have to treat? Well, the bees are the greatest regulators of temperature of anybody out there. They're organisms. They will beard, they will haul water in, they will place that water in open cells, they will fan it, they will keep that temperature at the optimum of 94 to 95 degrees to keep that queen laying eggs. Now, the beauty about the higher the temperature, the shorter the startup time is. So at 70 degrees, you may have a 25-minute startup time to get to 106 degrees. At 100 degrees, you better be right there with the hive, because in about 8 to 12 minutes, you're going to be at mite set point.
So that brings up a question for me. How does the device overwhelm the bees' ability to keep their hive cooler than what you're trying to heat it to?
And they can. Bees, here's one of the interesting factors when I was testing. I had 40 different sensors in hives, and I was writing the program, and I'd find deviations without bees, just using drone comb. I'd find deviations in the corners of the hive, and it may be 1 to 1.5 degrees below the set point I was trying to reach. And after 4, 5, 6 weeks, I finally just put it in a hive. The bees immediately sense the rising temperature and go to fanning. And on my Excel spreadsheet, within 5 to 6 minutes, I had an even temperature throughout the hive body, exactly 106.5 degrees. So they were doing, for me, what I couldn't do as a software program. Now they will come out and beard on the outside of the box. I think we showed some pictures on a double deep down here. Well, there's one. You can see how they're bearding. They're trying everything they can to run that temperature back down to optimum 94 to 95 degrees. I must have skipped over it. But even here at nighttime in Texas, where the ambient temperature was 90 degrees at night, a strong hive, they'll beard all the way across 2 deep brood boxes. But they can't drive it back down.
Hey, Len, we've been using your treatment for a while, and I think one of the things that you told me in the beginning, that if you're using any other chemical treatment, that has to be added out of the hive before you start using the heat treatment.
We've had one massive kill. A lady did a thermal treatment about 3 weeks after she had used a chemical treatment. the residue that was left in that hive, when you put heat to it, it just, expanded throughout the hive, and she had a massive kill off. We're talking about probably 10, 12,000 bees.
Wow.
So we recommend, with our instructions, 90 days minimum. If you've used any form of chemicals, you got to wait 90 days before you can do a thermal treatment.
Okay, and one of the other concerns, we had a discussion a couple of months back during these meetings, the sperm count of the drone is affected by heat treatment.
That's where Allie McAfee came into play. And she has apologized, and even in that American Bee Journal article, she apologized. Most people misread her study. Her study was based on shipping queens, drones, and testing them in an incubator with no flowing air, no attendees to look after them. In Canada, they get 250,000 queens flown in from New Zealand every spring. So her study wanted to see when they arrive in Canada, they've got to be reshipped again. So Postal Service, UPS, they're your two biggest carriers. They can be subject to high temperatures with these carriers. So she did a setup to simulate the shipping carriers issues, 4 hours in an incubator with no flowing air at high temperatures, 110 degrees and above. The difference is when you have flowing air, you don't have oxygen starvation, you don't have humidity changes. And so we've never had any issues with, viability of queens or drones. I've had some great conversation with her. And in fact, if COVID hadn't hit, I was looking forward to, flying out to British Columbia and spending some time with her.
So I have a question. Is it interchangeable on box sizes from your 5 frame to 10 frame to 8 frame?
I don't recommend it. Some people can do it at higher ambient temperatures. Aluminum is a great heat transfer. So if you can imagine your 8 frame hive, our unit is designed 12 inches wide. Our 10 frame unit is 14 and a half inches wide. So if you put an 8 frame in a 10 frame box, we lose that thermal transfer. It just works smoother when you got the right size. Now, customers are very innovative, and I love the 2,000 customers we have, because their input back to me has brought changes over the years that's improved the product. But it's got some really innovative folks out there. They have 8 frames hives and they have 10 frame hives. So they make a little box as their bottom board. They set their 8 frame brood boxes on this box and they treat it with a 10 frame unit. They've just framed up the extra 2.5 inches off, slide it in there. Heat rises up through the 8 frame hive bodies and they do their thermal treatments that way. Do any of y'all have any thermoplastic or polystyrene hives?
No.
No.
That is our future. A thermoplastic hive has an R rating factor of 7 versus our wood is 0.7. I've got them. I've tested them. A thermoplastic hive, the bees at 24 degrees ambient temperature do not even cluster. They look like they're sitting in there drinking martinis and smoking cigars. It is amazing. They will not cluster until it gets 20 degrees. Now, the other neat thing about these hives is thermal treatment. You can do more than just the brood box. I've done a double deep and a honey super with an Apamay thermoplastic hive. I killed the mites throughout the entire hive and did alcohol washes 10 days later and had 0 mite counts. The polystyrenes are really, starting to take off. They're about half the price of the thermoplastics. There's some benefits one way or the other. You have to paint them, the polystyrenes, and they will deteriorate lifetime-wise quicker. The thermoplastics have like a 30-year UV rating from being exposed to the sun, whereas the polystyrenes, I think they're still good for about 7 to 10 years. But the other neat thing about thermoplastic is your brood supers and everything have stainless steel latches that latch together. So people in bear country can use the thermoplastic hives, and a bear cannot get into that hive. It can slap it around, roll it around the yard, everything, but a bear doesn't know how to undo a latch. Whereas our wooden hives just get destroyed. I've seen pictures from customers down in North Texas, close to Oklahoma and Arkansas, and they had a couple of Apamay hives and like 12 or 13 standard woodenware hives, and all the wooden boxes were just shredded and tore all to pieces. The bears gorged themselves, and they had rolled the the thermoplastic hives around all over the place, and they just went in and set them back up and inspected them to make sure the queen was okay from all that jostling around, and they were good to go. Bears can be a problem. I got a question for y'all, since everybody got quiet. How many people utilize double deeps for their brood? Okay. Why?
Why? I think because in B school they suggested it, so I just went with what they taught me.
Okay. Let me give you a little history on double deeps, because I'm as guilty. I had 30 of them at one time with screen bottoms.
Yeah.
This was a marketing ploy by the bee supply companies 30 years ago. The first marketing part of it was, okay, screen bottom. We got this nice little plastic mite board with the checkers on it, and you can count your mites.
Mm-hmm.
You talk to the scientists, by the time you see dead mites on that board, you're in serious trouble.
Mm-hmm.
There's no scientific studies that confirm what you see on that board versus an alcohol wash or a sugar roll. The other part of the marketing thing was double deeps. You can raise more bees. Not possible. A quality queen lays 1,500 eggs a day. If you got a 10 frame, you got 70,000 drone comb cells. You take 15 times 22 days, what do you got? 34,000 eggs she's laid.
Mm-hmm.
You take out for pollen, honey in the corners, you've still got between 50 and 55,000 cells available for her to lay in. And every 21, 22 days, you got bees hatching off. And they're cleaning those cells up. So you cannot overpopulate a single deep. It's not possible. you read Dr. Charles Owen's 5-year study. Bees cluster and feed like a teardrop. The right-hand side of the cluster goes vertically up to feed and back down. At the same time, they maintain that center around the queen at 90 degrees. So if you got double deeps and the bees feed vertically, they're going to feed on just the 3 or 4 center frames in your second deep. I got thermal images that show that the cluster would move up right to the break line between the bottom deep and the second deep. And if you don't have food above that, your bees are going to starve to death during the winter.
Mhm.
So here's what happens. You catch a couple of warm days during the winter, bees are starving. The cluster will break up. They will go feed horizontally. You get a sudden drop in temperature, they cannot recluster in time. They freeze to death. A big killer of our hives during the winter is through all this marketing ploy that was done 30 years ago. Anybody familiar with Bee Culture magazine? Kim Floatham? He's now retired. He was editor-in-chief for 30 plus years, traveled the whole world. I went to 2 of his 2-day schools, and the first one, I'd been doing studies on the double deeps. And at the end of his presentation, which is an all-day presentation, in fact, it was at Cabarrus County Civic Center, the Bee Club there at Cabarrus County brought him in. So I walked up to Kim, and I've traveled all through Ohio, where he's from, and where Bee Culture magazine is located. And I looked at him and I said, Mr. Floatham, I've been all through Ohio, and double deeps hive setups are everywhere. He turned red in the face. He was so mad. He said, number one, the answer to your question is this wrong. Number 2 is the same answer as number 1, and number 3 is the same answer as number 1. And I had a spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet, a Word document listing all the negatives, and I handed it to him. He read down through there and looked at me and he said, you got it right. I said, I got thermal images to back it up too. He said, it's the worst setup that any beekeeper that's a hobbyist could do. There are exceptions. Commercial beekeepers that are pollinators that truck their bees all over the country. And I've worked with the Hackenberg family, and I'll be back with them in November down in Florida. But they run nothing but double deeps. No honey supers, just double deeps, because they are trucking these hives on pallets throughout the nation. Their justification, and they need this for double deeps, is they average a 30 plus loss of hives every year, even using chemicals. So they do splits off their double deeps. I mean, this will start in November. They'll be doing splits, and they buy a lot of queens, and they spend a lot of money on chemicals. The other part of the industry is people who sell nukes. They utilize double deeps for their splits, and they add queens to them, and they sell nukes locally to all the hobbyists. But there's no reason for a hobbyist that's looking to enjoy the honey crop to run a double deep. A single deep, if you get in trouble with a single deep, you can easily just put a super on there and let the queen move up and lay her eggs in the super. But inspections on double deeps will wear you out going through 20 brood frames.
Mhm.
It really will. And the other issues is if your queen gets honey bound or pollen bound, if you have a full frame of honey in your brood box as a roadblock to the queen, same thing with pollen. She will not cross that frame to lay eggs. So if you get a little laxy-daisy and don't do regular inspections, and you got about 3 to 4 frames in the center that are nice brood, And then you got honey and pollen frames outside of that. You need to rotate those to the outside wall and get those drawn comb frames back to where she can lay. Anybody use vented tops?
Vented tops?
Mm-hmm.
No.
In 2017, a group of Australians flew over here, and I met them in Missouri. They had a friend over there had 30 hives in his apiary. And I flew out and we did thermal treatments and did follow-up mite counts and everything. And they were looking at our standard laying hives and they go, you have no ventilation. You think about it, we have an inner lid with an 1.25 inch slot cut in it. And then we put a lid on the top of that. So you wonder why our bees beard so much in the summertime. They're trying to keep that temperature at 95 degrees on the inside of the brood box. But in Australia, New Zealand, their tops all have 3 holes in the front, 3 in the back. They're 24 millimeter diameter, which is approximately the same as 7/8 diameter. They staple steel screen wire over that hole on the inside. They get a positive airflow. I've been testing for 2 years. When it's 100 degrees here in South Carolina, I'd be lucky to have 75 bees bearding on the outside of the box. People in Texas and Southern California at 100 degrees have tested. Well, that keeps the productivity of the hive up because if they're not bearding, they are out foraging. Now, wintertime, you get condensation and rain out in our hives. With vented tops, you got a positive airflow. You don't have nosema, you don't have condensation, you don't have bees freezing to death. You look at all the hives in Europe and other parts of the world, thermoplastic, polystyrenes, even the wooden hives in Europe, all have vented tops. And they prosper. So here's what I did. What got me into thermal treatment, because in the industry, I've always been coming up with solutions to problems. I lost 31 out of 37 hives because I refused to use chemicals. So it put me on a quest, going to conferences, talking to scientists. So I had all these leftover medium supers. So I made a poor man's, what I call a poor man's ventilator. I put the holes in the front and rear of that super. I put it as my last item on top of my honey supers, then my inner lid, then my lid, and I get the same positive airflow as the rest of the world does with vented tops. I just made a cheap version of it. And it works. I've been running those for 3 years now. I have 0 condensation in the winter. Surely somebody's got some more questions.
Well, it is past 8, which is when we usually wrap up our meetings.
Good.
Certainly, if anybody has any further questions, we can keep on, but I don't want to keep anybody if you've got things to move on to next for the rest of your evening.
Yeah, I think my Nutri-Grain bar is about to run out. Supper time. Well, I want to thank y'all very much. Join the Facebook group. Our website's down, has been for 2 or 3 months. We're rebuilding it. We haven't been able to produce any product this year. We were sold out, thanks to Dr. Samuel Ramsey, very quickly in our inventory the first quarter. When COVID settles down, we hope to start manufacturing again this winter and have a product available next spring. But the Facebook group has all the studies. You can very freely ask questions about thermal treatment. That's Mighty Mite thermal treatment users. And we have some scientists on there under aliases and some really good master beekeepers from all over the US that are using the product. And I thank you for your time. And doing a Zoom presentation was not quite as scary as I thought it would be.
Well, thank you very much, Lynn, for coming and speaking to us and braving the new world of Zoom presentations.
Yes, I thought I was pretty decent with computers, but boy, when you brought that to my attention, I was like, oh my goodness, Elizabeth, here I come. Y'all have a blessed evening. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Lynn.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Lynn. Thank you.
Oh, Ryan, thank you for getting this started. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate this.
Oh, you did pretty good with that gal sitting beside you.
You're okay. We're a good team.
I'm sure she keeps you in line.
I become the beekeeper's helper.
There you go. Y'all have a good night. Thank you.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I figure out how to get out.
Good night. I'm gonna go ahead and end the session. So see you next month, I guess.
Thank you.
You're adjourned.
Yeah.
Good
Bye-bye.
night, everyone.
Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome. Glad you could make it.